Welcome to Focus on Liberia. Welcome to our show. This is Sunday, April 11th. This is the eve of what we come to know in Liberia as a Redemption Day. That how it was called. April 12th, 1980. We are on the eve. So this time we want to do a retrospect of 1980. So the topic, April 12th, 1980, in retrospect. What happened? What did we learn? And what can we do about that? With me in studio, I have someone or two individuals who know a thing or two about 1980, 1979 because they were in the middle of it all. Introducing first from Toe Town, Mr. Samson B. Toe. He's a host of LPR. That's a conversation with Samson B. Toe. Mr. Toe, welcome to Focus on Liberia.
Thank you, Mr. Dow. Appreciate it.
Thank you. And next is someone who was in the thick of things as well with Linsu and all of that, Mr. Manju Freeman. Mr. Freeman, welcome to Focus on Liberia.
Thank you very much, Dennis.
We want to welcome all viewers from across the globe. This is Focus on Liberia. What we do here, we try to educate, to elevate, and promote all things Liberia. We want to have a conversation about 1980, and we cannot talk about 1980 without mentioning 1979. So I have two gentlemen here who they were young boys during that time. So I will let them introduce themselves and just tell a little bit about their connection or how they come to know about 1980, 1979. Briefly, let me start with Mr. Manju Freeman. Mr. Freeman, you were with Linsu. You guys were the troublemakers.
Well, we were not troublemakers. We were the luminaries of the time. We were far ahead of our time. We saw that unity amongst our people was something that we needed to have. We didn't have it to the extent that we needed it, and we felt that that would have been an impediment to the development of our country. And so we as students felt that it was part of, especially those of us that were at University of Liberia and Cotton University, we felt that we needed to organize ourselves if we wanted to have a voice in the Liberian system. And so on April 14, 1979, we were meeting at and on the Cotton campus, forming the Liberian National Students Union, Linsu. That's the day that Linsu was. The organization had started previous to then, but that was the day that we culminated, most of what we became, and that was the founding of Linsu.
And Mr. Freeman, briefly about yourself and your connection with the whole thing.
Well, my name is Manju Freeman. I was a student at Cotton those days. I was studying chemistry. Actually, I had just come back to Cotton after I was first of all expelled from Cottington and then placed on trial. And after my trial, I was found not guilty. And then I was taken back to Cottington. Pardon me?
You say expelled from Cottington and put on trial. What for?
There were several charges. Sedition was one of them. Treason was one. False imprisonment was another. Assault and battery with intent to do grievous bodily harm was another. These were all trucked up charges to get me out of school. And so I was in concussion with the government and the university.
That's the toughest government.
Because I was an outspoken critic of how things were going at the time, and was a strong proponent of having the movement of justice in Africa on Cotton campus. And since they did not want it there, and those kind of clashes came together, and so in the beginning of my sophomore year, they got together and they charged me with all of those things after a brief demonstration on the campus that everybody took part in. But I was one of those. I was the one that was singled out for expulsion, put on trial by the Justice Ministry led by Oliver Bright at the time. And After several months, Oliver Bright himself called me in one day and said, Manju, I think something's wrong here, and I would write the president and let him know that you're not guilty. But by that time, I had missed the opening of school and a lot of stuff, and I had the letter of expulsion from Cotton. And after Oliver Bright rescinded what they had put all these charges they had placed on me, then they said they switched it to a year and a half, almost 2 years suspension. And so I served that time. And so that 1979, I had just gone back to Cotton.
Thank you. Next, we have Mr. Samson Brown Toh. He's from Town. Mr. Toh, what?
Thank you, Mr. Jad. That's right. I am from Town, the Chiefdom, Boston District, Grand Junior County. So I'm far removed from the inner circle of the Monroe City. But no, Mr. Jab, my own connection with the April 1979 riots, April 14, 1979 riots. In fact, it was then considered to be trouble, they call it, April 14. But my own involvement, like I stated to you earlier, I consider myself, I was in college, I was in high school at the time, Wilson High to be specific, over there on Benson Street, at the corner of Benson and Center Street. So they have a high school, the Wilson High, Wilson Memorial High School. I was in high school at the time. And but I was working at the Ministry of Education. And my mom, Madam Dr. Bertha Baker's uncle, who was then Deputy Minister for Education Research, she was my mother, and she employed me. But what she did was that at that time, my focus was not on education as much. I was out into EJ Raw and other places. Education was not something that I have interest in. I wanted to hang out. But she made it clear to me that it is important, even as young as I was, that I pay attention to these things. And she began to introduce me to then what they call country boys, educated people. Or people like Armo Jackson F. Doe was introduced to me as being someone who is also from the interior but highly educated, and other people. In fact, Oliver Duncan, even though he's a Congo person, but he also educated person. So I was introduced to a lot of folks who were educated, but yet still I never pay attention to it. And when we were considered the uneducated foot soldier, because we used to attend some of PAR meetings when PAR started in Liberia, Mojad, specifically Mojad. I wasn't much involved with Mojad because I believe when Dr. Tipote, who is a good friend of mine as well, but when he came up with the Tipote slippers, the rubber tire that he made out of slippers, it was very interesting. But he was not much more vocal. He wasn't pushing. He wasn't aggressive. So when PA came around, those of us that from the countryside, we enjoyed the lecture. People like Deacon Kala was staying on the stuff with the bullhorn and started lecturing about how the government was behaving towards us. And my first inclination of how the top government was behaving and what they were doing to us was back in the early 70s when I was at GW. Wilson Tapper, who is now, I believe, a minister or somebody somewhere else in this government, was then the teacher, economic teacher at GW. But what he would do, we were at night, so when he comes to class at night, he will put the economic issue aside and then try to lecture us about how this government, some of the things the government was doing. And by the time he's done lecturing, your mind is all blown up. So when Power came, it was very easy. And so we got involved as far as foot soldiers concerned. We listened to their lecture and things like that. And a few people were arrested at one time and went to a trial at the Temple Justice. And at the time, Chessing, Joseph Chessing, who was then Minister of Justice, was considered to be missing. In fact, poor man's lawyer. In fact, he was lawyer to most of the young people that were arrested. So we were at the courthouse, Temple Justice, and before the court started, Chelsea came from in a bike where the lawyer entered, and when he entered the place, the entire place went wild. They had to kick her out, and they brought army around, kick everybody out, and we were out of there. But what the Saturday of April 14, I was in the thick of it.
And Mr. Toe, we'll get to April 14 and see. We really want to establish what happened. But your connection also is your older brother to one of the 17 men.
Yes, yes. Nelson Blito was one of the 17 enlisted men that overthrew the Togo government. And one of the interesting things you will find, after the coup, they have listed the 17 men. And at that point, you will not find the first list. You will not find his name on it because I refused for him to get back out because I was concerned. And I stood to the doorway while they were making the list at the executive mansion. His name was left out on the first list. But I will explain that later. But anyhow, he's one of those that was involved in the coup. And his involvement at very young age, which we all believe he was around maybe 16, 17 the most. And I will explain that later. But his involvement was very interesting. And it's all happening right before my eyes. Things that I wasn't paying attention to at the time. What that caused him to be this much involved into Liberian politics and what have you. But we'll talk about it. Yeah, he's my little brother.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you're just joining us, this is Focus on Liberia. We are discussing April 12, 1980 in retrospect. And I have with me Mr. Samson Bito, brother of Mr. Nelson, the late Nelson Bito, who was part of the 17 men. And also have Mr. Manju Freeman, a part of Linsu at that time when the 79 riot and also the coup of 1980 took place. They are here to help us to retrospect, and this is how we said we want to know exactly what happened. This happened when people, they are alive now. So why can we get to the truth? There has been a lot of conspiracies, but in 1980, I was all the way behind God's back in Dudwickham when the coup took place, and I heard songs like, "Thanks to the People Redemption Council, our Savior, our Redeemer. No more corruption, our eyes are open, Artina, this is our time." Mr. Freeman, let's start with April. There could be, maybe, there could have been no April or April 12 without April 14. So let's go a little bit back and start with 1979 riot. What do you know about that? To many, there was no riot. People gathered and somebody went there and started shooting. Other people say they were deaf, up to 500. Some say no. And I remember the song at that time was April 14. Hey, yeah, turbo mistake. Was it your turbo mistake? What do you know?
I think it was a mistake for the police, and some of the soldiers to go out there and start shooting. Like my old man said, during that time, you say, all they have to do is let these people march as much as they want. When they get tired, they will go home. But what all of the things that led up to it, was the Progressive Alliance of Liberia, PAL, led by Bacchus Matthews at the time, that started that organization. They had younger leaders that were more energetic, that wanted to. They wanted a revolution, and people in Moja felt that we should evolve. In order for us to do that, we needed to make sure that we educated the Liberian people and get them up to a certain level before we go up to governmental, things like that. And so we began, there's a project that we started in Grand Jita called Susuku. Susuku was, I don't know if Mr. Tour is familiar with Susuku. Maybe he was too young at the time, but we had some of that cooperative farming where we were growing.
Who is the we when you say we?
The Moja.
Okay.
Yeah, Moja was doing that, but we felt that educating the Liberian people and bringing them up to par before going into that revolutionary state that came, that somehow, was almost like jump started in 1980. We felt that we needed to first of all get those things. So we were not. People think all the progressive groups were in consonance with what was happening, going to happen on April 14. No, April 14, Moja was broadly against the demonstration. We felt that the Liberians were not prepared for a demonstration, that were not organized enough. But backers and them had come from the United States, and they had seen certain protestations and etc. And they felt that it would work over there. And we're not saying this in enmity to each other, but there were some differences of what the course of actions were supposed to be. And so, there were some big arguments. Some of them almost came to fist fights, in between Pal and Moja about that. And then so when the thing took place on April 14, and again, there was a lot of disagreement, but people forget that there were more people from Moja placed in prison after April 14 than people in Pal. Even though we were not the one that primarily organized it, we did have some people, obviously, that took part in there. I say I'm talking about the Moja. But, we were working towards maybe the same goals, but some people went on Broad Street and took that way, and then some other people went on Ashmore Street and took that way. And the convergence was not there because these were two parallel lines traveling. And so wherever they have places for coincidence or somewhere out in space.
So before I go to Mr. Toe, was there actually a riot on that day?
The rioting began when they started shooting people. Okay, they went to the PAL headquarters, and that's where they tried to arrest the demonstration there. And the demonstration was not arrested there. And they were saying when you have chaos, you have those who take advantage of the chaos. And they started breaking into stores on Broad Street and Benson Street and whatnot, because those were the social and economic streamlines that were going through Monrovia, and those places were attacked. And so then afterwards they blamed all of that, but that thing really began when they started shooting and people started running, helter skelter and all of that. The official death toll that they had, because the government came up after that and said about 3 to 5 people had been killed and a few people were injured, which everybody knew was a lie. And so later on, the official death toll that came out was 276. And some people still feel that it's a little higher than that.
Mr. Toe, I saw you were nodding because you and Mr. Freeman did not speak, but he was saying that power was taking it easy, but when Mr. Manju, they came with the youthful exuberance, and Mr. Toe in Wilson High felt that this is the message, man. This guy wasting time. What do you know?
Yes. Like I said, I really appreciate his knowledge on this, and it's very, very refreshing. Even though I was not one of those that considered the educated foot soldier, but I was quite aware of things that was happening. Remember, I work at the Ministry of Education. And like I told you earlier, my mom, Dr. Bertha Baker's uncle, made sure that most of the thing that was happening in Monrovia, in terms of going to court, any publication, she made sure that I got my hand on it. And if I can't read it, most of the time I couldn't, she would read it and explain it to me. She was just like a mother. I mean, she was my mom. But also remember, Dr. Bole was working at the Ministry of Education, who at that time was a very permanent person at the Ministry of Education. And in fact, Dr. Bole's story with as far as I'm concerned, coming to Liberia, as I told you earlier, Dennis, my mom used to ice me to watch the educated country boys. And because she felt that I have no interest in education. So what she wanted to do was to push me in that line. So after having introduced me to many other people, luckily for me, Dr. Bole came to Liberia before the Rice Riot. And when he came, he was assigned directly with Madam Butterbaker's uncle. At first, he was on the 4th floor, as I think it was a deputy minister for some research. Anyway, I mean deputy director. So Madam Butterbaker brought him upstairs and invited me and said, Samson, because most night you will find me in a club. There's no question asked. So she said, I've been telling you about school and you don't think this is serious. This is a crown man who has a PhD. And at that time, the only crown man PhD that I know about was Dr. Trouble Bahai. And Dr. Bole, with a fair skin afro, looking like African American at the time, I'm thinking to myself, well, she just pulling one. Because there's no way this man gonna look like a crown man and be a PhD. So I said, okay, ma, yeah. Just like that. And then Dr. Bole go, you don't find ma? And my heart just jumped out of my head to be complete. I mean, I was surprised. From that moment on, I decided education was something that I'm going to follow. But anyway, Dr. Bole being involved into
Mr. Joe, that's very interesting to me. In your mind, a crown man or a countryman would not be educated. That's why Dr. Bole's education. What was happening at that time that make you come to that conclusion?
Because several things. As my mom keep pushing me to this thing, it happened to be that sometime Togo government decided to have some sort of a election replacement process at the EJ. So my mom heard about it and she told me to go there that evening. So when I went there, they were, as God could have it, I was allowed in. In the place, they were getting ready to replace one of Totman old guy they call Tole, Captain Tole, who were responsible for the death of Coleman, one Coleman. So he was made representative. And another person, Abba White, who was then sent over there in Grand Gide, exile or something, whatever the story it is, by Totman. So he also were asked to be senator. The question was Abba White, was he a Grangidian? And many Grangidians, including John Bear and everybody, because I heard other than that night, no, he's not a crown man. He can't be. And another person who happened to be my own cousin, Mr. Kemmer, Baba Kemmer, who was an immigration officer in Totem, was then given the position to replace Mr. Tode that night. And Abba White, Turbo Ice, the superintendent of Grand Gide County, Mose P. Harris, I was there. As young, I know, but I was there. And I asked him, if he's from Grand Gide, they say, yeah. He said, yeah, that's crown man. They made him senator. So I was quite aware of this thing. And another interesting thing was Dr. Trouble Bahai was given a position. And the entire crown people in Monrovia decided to send a petition to Toba to tell him thank you for giving the only educated crown man, according to them, a position. So that made me aware of the kinds of position crown people were in Monrovia. So when Dr. Bole came as a crown man, that was a different issue totally for me. But let me go on to the 14 Rice Riot. It was on a Saturday. The night before, Friday. Let me give you a little background also. Where I was living on Camp Johnson Road, I wasn't married. I lived in a one-room apartment. Everybody, that was a high class then. But the interesting thing was, most of the people, the young people that were in that same building, they were all LU students. I was the only person, because of course I was young, but I was the only person that was not LU student. They have 3 students. In fact, one of the ladies here in Sacramento with me. I'm not going to call her name. But they have 3 students who graduated from BWI at the time. And they were very much involved into Liberian politics. So every Saturday or Sunday, we get together and talk. But anyway, this particular Saturday, Friday before that night, we heard there was going to be a demonstration the next day. We didn't know how big it was going to be. They have people were coming from, you're supposed to be coming from Newtown, were coming to Monrovia. So PA, as Mr. Freeman correctly stated here, Moja, for us, it was slow. They want to educate us. We got time for education. We want it now. And that's what PAP represented at the time. Boom, 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 let's go get it. And they were burning the mind of the young people. So that Saturday morning, I went to work to clean the office, as I suppose so. So after that, I said, let me just go down, get it straight. PA office behind what they call PUA. I don't know what PUA, we have a different name, but I'm not going to say it publicly here. But anyway, I think it was some sort of a water and sewer building. right
Public
behind
Utilities Authority.
Sony Wayne at the building, and then on the other side of Sony Wayne, that's where they have Power Office. Power Office is on Getty Street. On the other side of Getty Street, you got Center Street Graveyard. On the other side, you have Power Office. And in that little office, they have a fence, a concrete fence that is no higher than anything like 3-4 feet. So people started coming. So Deacon Carla, my understanding before we left, they were getting ready to dismiss the demonstration because they felt that they were not ready to be able to guide it if anything goes out of hand. So Deacon Carla was just making a statement to say we're going to have to put ourselves together and try to see if this thing gets stopped. But more people started coming from Nuclear Town, coming on Lean Street, not Lean Street, but coming Macklin Street, Ronald Street, coming towards the Power Office. Interestingly, that morning, I was right there. My brother and a few other army people, they were also there. So the group of army people that came in a Jeep, they made a line and their bike was against the fence of the Center Street Graveyard, but they didn't do anything. So another group of police came in, one light-skinned lieutenant, and he came with another guy called Hare, Dr. Hare, who used to be at the Ministry of Education, who I know very well. That was his son. The reason I know his son, because he was a handicap. So I know Hare. So he came with it because I think he was working with NSA or something. So they came. And the light-skinned police guy told his people to push these people from the government sidewalk. If they want to do anything, they should stay in the property of Power Office in their little fence. Over 300-400 people. And you want to shove all of them in that little gathering. There was no room. So as they pushed the people, the group took off from there, get on Ronald Street, started going toward Broad Street. That was the start of the riot. I took off, went out with them. Some went on Broad Street, they make a right, started going towards the mansion. And when we got to Camp Johnson Road area, they started using tear gas. And one of the army guy was telling every one of us, if the tear gas hit you, get a potato green, rub it on your face, and the tear gas going to go away. That's how much they were helping us. But when they started going to Buza Quarter area, going to maternity center area, shooting started. Samson Toad left.
Mr. Toad, by that time you were not Samson Toad, you were Samson Brown.
No. Samson Brown was in Zwadru.
Okay.
Yeah, that was in Zwadru. So I left, but the reason why I left, my brother came at that time. He was already dressed in full army uniform, and he saw people being shot, get killed. So he came. In fact, while we was standing on Camp Johnson Road, the army guy jumped out of the truck with his gun like this, and the gun went off. And there was a guy that was standing. Few people here in the United States, I'm not going to call their name, but the gun went off and hit one of the guys that was standing with us. And the guy went like this, tried to find his living. He just passed. And when my brother came, he said, I don't want to see you in the street. There are a lot of things that happen. People are dying. So I left. Thank you. That was one other interesting thing. And this is very sad. There was a young man in the same area, basketball, him and his brother. The older brother, just like me, didn't want to go to school, but he was worse than that. He was truly robbing and stuff like that. And this other young man, he was going to LU at the time. The night the night of the riot, the police, army people came around and they said he stole something. The next day, his body was in the street. And that was very, very touching. And it was very close to us because we knew each other real well.
Thank you. There's a question and I'm about to ask you, and someone asking the question. So this demonstration, what was it about? From what I read, they say rice and rights. Mr. Freeman, let me start with you.
Well, you know, depending upon who you talk to, both of them were in there somewhere. You know, and it was What Pal was able to do was to put rice as a right, for the Liberian people into the body politic of the time. And most people didn't know how the mixture would work out. But, rice was going from, I think, from $15 or so, somewhere in there to almost $30. And there were people in Liberia, they were making $40 a month, so the price of rice was supposed to go that high because the government said they were not going to subsidize it anymore. They couldn't afford to subsidize it. It was a drag on the economy. They didn't explain this to the Liberian population like this. And even had they explained it like that, most people would not have understood. But because they said they were going to so-called jack the price up, a lot of people became very, very emotional about it because that's our staple. That's our staple. And so Powell was able to put that into the body politic to say that these people here, Powell promised that they could get rice cheaper, but the government would not allow them to do it. And so they brought that as part of the politics that they will go with. And people started to listen to that because the government trying to mess with our rice, how we eat and so forth, wawa pusawa, that's how they call it. And once all of this was mixed up in the body politic, like some kind of a big mixture of soup that got beef fish and everything in there, people just decided they just ate up whatever the politics was at that time. So, and they because they said they couldn't afford the rice, had it gone up to the price that the government was suggesting, it made it easy for them to say, you know what, we'll take part in this demonstration.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, like Toll said, Samson said, they can't call it. They tried to call it off after they started to see the crowd. And that's exactly what Moja had warned them about, that if these people come out, you'll not be able to control them. This is not a phenomenon that the Liberians are used to. So if they start coming out, will you be able to stop them? So on that morning, when they tried to start it, the dam had been broken and the water was now gushing in there, way too heavy for them. And some of them immediately took into hiding because they could not control that crowd. And that's how this thing, spun, that's one of the reasons why it spun out, but I think mainly because of the shootings that began.
Right. And before we move to my last question on the topic, because we have 1980 to talk about, is so Powell was speaking about government issues, and then this rice issue was just an icing on the cake to really get the people rattled. Is that what I mean?
Yes. Yeah.
And how legitimate or how were the issues that Powell raising? Was it superficial? Was it for their own good, or was it genuine issues that Powell raising?
It was superficial on certain aspects because it was something that was being used, in there, but it was realistic to the Liberian people, and even from their view, it was realistic because, the government had actually said they were going to raise the price of rice to about $30 per bag. So when you get something where you're raising the price, almost 150%, you will have that kind of thing, especially when your population is really poor. And it cannot, and most people looked at it like, you kind of, we'll be hungry because there's not, we can't afford a bag of rice. If you buy the rice, you're not going to pay a little rent.
Right.
Mr.
Yeah.
Mr. Toe, before you come, my question to you is, Powell was speaking these things and you were like jumping. What was actually moving you? Why did you believe Powell's message and then rice being added on top of it now? That was enough for you to say, yes, let's do it.
Well, for me, Mr. Jaya, I come to this, from a very young age, of course, but I grew up in Toll Town. Toll Town was a chiefdom seat in their chiefdom, where country people, will be people who don't have the money to pay taxes, and the kinds of treatment that was given to them in those villages in Toll Town on behalf of the Tugui party was unbearable for some of us. So when I came to Monrovia and I started realizing that these people, you look at the school system in Liberia, they have certain group of Liberians that were going to specific school. They have another group of Liberians. For me, is I go to BTC Elementary School, then I move up to GW Gacy, then I move up to Mantelo Nipos High School, junior high, then I move up to Tuckman High. Then from Tuckman High now, if I pass the test and they decide to keep me on, because they have a system where they usually will try to replace people. If they decide to keep from Town on that list, that will be, and then I'm allowed to go to LU. So the system they had at the time was just bad. And many people were quite aware of it. Another thing, when Florence Chinaway, who was then Secretary or Minister of Agriculture, when she made a proposal to raise the price, the intent was, but we didn't know that at the time, of course. But the intent was, Lofa County being the breadbasket of Liberia, that if they were to raise the price, Liberians were going to try to stay away from imported rice and try to purchase local rice, which were going to be cheaper. That was the intent. However, also, Chinaway, their family have a big farm, rice farm. Toba and his family have a big rice farm. So when no, these people are trying to make profit. So when you connect those two together, these families having a big rice farm, and they're now trying to raise the price of the rice. It was just easy for some of us to say, we don't even want them. Let's do whatever we have to do and get them out. So it was easy.
Jude Charles said there was an advertisement on the radio, 1980, no more Pusawa, go back to the soil. This guy was
yeah. Tobo had a system. I believe he called it mattress. But Tobo also, though. Let's be fair here. Tobo was one of those. Now I know now. Back then, I just want them out. I just want them out. Yeah. So, but interestingly, Tobo's position at the time was that we have to integrate. We have to get everybody on board. But the Congo elite, my understanding, the Congo elite, including his own brother, they don't want that. His brother used to have a house on Benson Street. True story. Where lunchtime, when he in that house, you try to walk on that side of the bench, on that side of the street, the army will push you away. You're not allowed in that on Benson Street, not something like secluded or something like that. On Benson Street. Okay, so that's how much dominating sector these people were towards certain group, and we're all brothers and sisters, but they refuse to allow that. And some of us even try to be like Congo people. That's how ridiculous things were. But the educated foot soldier, of course, like Mr. Freeman, they don't believe in that. But some of us, those of us that were not educated and want to join it, want to be like them too, But it was just bad.
Thank you. Mr. Freeman, want to say something before we move to 1980?
Yeah, my own family goes back to, my name is Freeman, and we adopted the name Freeman in the late 1870s because we are famulous. And my own first thing brushed with the law was in 1968 when my uncle, the late Henry Boymadu Famule, was accused of trying to overthrow the Tubman administration, and it took us down to the what they call the Plant Protection Force prison in Yekepa, and I was at the age of 11 at the time, and we were held there for some time until they felt that it was safe to release us to go back home. My own father was there too, and so these are my own conscientization began really at that time when I started to read more and more about what people did. And then I had so many uncles, including, Boymadu Famula is the father of Ish Boyma Famula and Baka Famula and Yata Famula. And me and my uncle would sit down and would talk about these things, and they were able to explain them to us. And so we became more and more conscientized. So some of us were blessed from the beginning to have some of these luminaries in our family. To listen, both on my mother and father's side, because on my mother's side, I also had the late Nettie Shea Brownell. And so these people were able to educate us very, very early. When someone talked about the David Coleman thing and Mr. Tory, David Coleman thing was in 1955. The plot that failed. If you read about it and how they did all these people. But I just want to say to Samson, that Lovetta Zango and I were on cutting up together.
That's right. That's right. Oh, now you
yeah, we're all cutting up together. Yeah. I used to help to coach her to play table tennis because she played table tennis.
Right.
Table tennis for that, yeah.
So, all right. So, gentlemen, just joining us, we are talking about April 12, 1980 in retrospect. I have Mr. Manju Freeman, a part of Linsu at that time, and Mr. Samson B. Toll from Town, who was a foot soldier of the PAL, at a very young age. Let's move on to 1980. To what extent did April 12, 1980 become like a byproduct of what we saw in 1979? Let's connect the dots. Let me start with Mr. Freeman.
After the killings of people in 1979, April 14, I think more Liberians became aware of their surroundings and started to take a little more part in the body politic. There were those who divorced themselves because they had seen death en masse in our society for the first time. But the young people became more energetic, more energized, and say, you know what, this is our stuff here. Our future is coming. Our future is here, and we have to seize it now. At least some of us looked at it that way. And so on April 12 of 1980 took most of us in Liberia by surprise that the event happened. But that the event itself happened and the circumstances leading up to how it happened was not surprising. It was not surprising. We're looking at a plethora of coups around Africa, one or two other places. But to get up that morning, because I got up that morning on Cuttington, I was being visited by Company Wisa. And we used to get up and sometimes jog, me and a few guys on campus who they would remain nameless because some of them were their fathers were in the Tubik party and so forth. But, I was a fitness guru and these guys would come and say, oh, Manju will go run along with you. So we got up early that morning, about 4:30. We were standing outside talking, three of us. And Company Wisa came outside with my transistor radio because he was spending the weekend there with me. And he said, hey, boy. I said, yeah, what happened, man? He said, man, I'm trying to get the radio station and you're not playing. And you're playing national anthem. I said, national anthem? What are they playing national anthem for? And he said, they keep playing it over and over and over and over. So, well, the transistor radio, if you move into certain positions, you're not going to hear anything. You got to stay in one or two spots to hear it. So we went back into the apartment in which I was, and we called the BBC. And the BBC, when the 5 a.m. news came on, they said there were some shots fired around the executive mansion. They were not sure of the state of affairs about the president of the Republic of Liberia, but someone had confirmed that Charlie Rayleigh, the executive mansion guard battalion chief, had been killed. And that's what it said. And one of the guys I was saying that said, man, the ignorant soldiers ain't able to overthrow anybody and so forth. And so, well, anyway, we kept trying to catch ELBC and ELWA and were unable to. And then later on, the BBC did announce that Talbot, somewhere around 8 o'clock, BBC announced that Talbot was confirmed killed, that a group of soldiers had taken over. And the original number there was 12. It was stretched out to 17 a little bit later. And then it went, I think, to like 29. What happened in there was that the Liberian National Students Union, on June 5th of 1980, we put together a resolution and read it to Dr. Samuel Doe. At that time, he was Dr. Samuel K. Doe on the steps of the executive mansion. when students from all over came. There were tens and tens and tens of thousands of students stretched over there. And Thomas J., who was the Secretary General of the LINSO, read our petition. And that petition included in there that we're asking the soldiers to tell us when they were going to return to the barracks. We wanted free and fair elections where all Liberians will be able to take part in there. We asked them to expand the People's Redemption Council because at that time, there were mostly people from Grand Juda, Nimba, and Sino. And we wanted every county in some way, and there were some people from Lafayette, and wanted every county to be represented in some way. So they expanded it to 17, and they expanded it to about 29, either 29 or 32. And that's how that council got bigger. But when the coup took place there first, there were supposed to be 12 of them.
So they listened to you.
Yeah, they took some of our suggestions. I really feel that had some elements had not infiltrated the PRC, I really feel this way. Had some elements had not infiltrated the PRC, they would have done better. If people had gone there with good intention to teach these guys and guide them, instead of looking at their own personal interests above that of the country, I really feel, because I had a couple of meetings with Doe. I met the late Weston many times, and Weston was a man I admired. He was really progressive. He wanted to do good. Unfortunately, there were other forces that intervened that caused the rift in between those members.
Mr.
And some of them were external and some were internal.
You made a profound statement. Say, had other forces have not infiltrated the PRC who have done well. What do you know?
They would have done better. I don't know about
better.
that.
Yeah, better. What do you know about that? Who entered the PRC to actually get things to drift off?
I will not call people by names, but some of these people that got into the PRC that infiltrated were actually people from past governments. Some of them came from the Togo regime, some from the Tupper time. They got in there, and what they began to do is that sometimes when you go up to people and you blow their ego, I remember one of the guys listening to Doe said Doe was the most illuminating, the smartest leader ever to be in Africa, and one of the smartest to be in the world. That Doe was a colossus amongst men. See, these people had these kinds of phrases that they placed on these people, and then eventually you begin to believe the story. Right. You know that you can only jump 10 feet high, but now this man is telling you that because of your elevated position, you can jump 50 feet high. And when you see yourself, the vibe people got something to say. If you really want to know a man, give him money and power. If you really want to know the person, give them money and power. And so those things, once those people started, just embossing these people with so many different, praises and etc. Yeah, some of these people lost their way, and that's how they started to factionalize among themselves. Kuampa, do here, Unti on this side, Podia on this side, Do on this side, Western on this side, and the factions grew.
I really wish you could call name, but I won't push you. Let me go to Mr. Toe. Mr. Toe, your not to overstress it, but your brother was part of this. What happened? What do you know? What do you learn at that time that really took place? There's still the information surrounding the death of Toba is still scanty. People are saying all kinds of things. I remember the late president's wife came up with a book, Lifted, and it says something else. What do you know?
Well, thank you. These are history, and we don't claim pure knowledge. And it's been a very long time anyway. So knowledge and remembering that a little bit difficult sometimes. But those of us that were pretty much connected remember most of these things. And I say happy, like I stated to you earlier, God have always been with me to be, when it comes to Liberian politics, one way or the other, I will be close. So when I left Liberia, let me just start from that point. When I left Liberia the second time to come back to the United States, I came to Dr. Dam, Marcus Dam, who is from Secretary, one of the heavyweight in the progressive. So, Mr. Dam, when I came here, he opened up to me. And just like the mother in Liberia, Madam Butcher Baker's uncle, Mr. Don, at that time, he's now PhD now, started showing me more things, how power was organized. Because remember, he was one of the Secretary General here for power when it first started. So I am quite involved, and I have much more when it comes to writings and things. I have much more paperwork to say. But those days when the time comes, we will try to review most of the stuff. For example, I know exactly what happened. There was an incident one time where the issue of what's his name, and my own man from Grand Gila County, John G. Ramsey, was accused of writing a specific letter about the Israeli and what have you. I have the facts, but I'm not ready to relieve those right now. But that's not the point. Let's go back to 1980. Mr. Jad, in fact, with respect to my brother involvement, looking back at it now, and I called one of my brother here today, Mr. Willie Branch, who was very much involved with my brother from day one until his death. He was the press secretary, so he knows more about everything that I'm going to be saying now. So I called him and I told him to listen. If he wants to call him, he can call him and give his own contribution as well. But what happened with this involvement with the coup in Liberia with respect to my brother was very interesting. My brother, back in 1976, he decided after he left Monrovia, when he was in Monrovia, Nelson really never liked school, just like me. They didn't want to go to school in Town until those days they had care food where I think it's the USAID used to bring food to Liberia to the region, poor region and stuff like that. So they Town having to be where the elementary school is, they have care food. And he said, okay, they got food, I'm going to go to school. So he started going to school. And then when the food dried out, so was his education. So, but anyhow, my other brother who is in North Dakota now, he was in the army, he left. So he wanted to get back in. So he asked Nelson if he wanted to get in because Nelson was pretty much not doing much in Total. So he said, yeah, but at that time he was very young. So he went for the recruiting process in Zwedru. And they told him they can't take him because he was just too small. Not only in age, he was short. So they can't take him. So he came back to Total and he started crying. So my father told him, if you want to find a way to get it. So he went back to Zwedru 2 days later. And luckily for him, one of the recruiting officers says, "There's not a small boy we sent by yesterday, throwing out. What are you here for?" So Nelson told him, "Want to join?" So the other guy said, "Well, the small man that they want to join, let him join. When we read a tree, he would run out." Involved in the army, went to training in Todi, where he used to stay. Because my other uncle, as I told you, Dennis, my other uncle, Mr. Steady Jackson, used to be a sharpshooter in Monrovia, fought war in Congo. So Nelson has always been around him. Anyhow, let's go back to 1980. So when Nelson left Total, he was in the army. And after the Rice Riot, we all went to vacation in Total. And while we were there, he saw the same thing that used to happen. They brought somebody in Total who were not able to pay his house tax, which was $10. And you had this person in his son with his knee on the rocks, looking up, hand behind his back, looking up in his son. Fortunately for him, my mom always carried $10. My mom paid. So Nelson went in the center of the town and said, these people, this government, that you're taking the money from fast and not coming back in total. They're eating the money. So of course the chief of clerk didn't like that. Talking about the government. So the guy in the argument, in fact, Nelson didn't sleep in the town. My mom told him he got to leave because the argument was just too much. So he left to come to Monterey at that time. But those were some of the things that really got him involved. So in after the Rice Riot, arrest people and things like 1980, remember, Bacchus Mafia and the rest of the group were in jail for some other whatever crime, tramper crime they had on there. So while they were in jail, they were being flogged. And it didn't sit well with most of the army people in the barracks. And they decided they were going to take the law into their own hand. To make long story short, Mr. Guy, there was certain group of people. If you remember, I don't know, many of you, I was in the barracks at that time. They used to have a defense invader. It was a football team where many of the coup plotter was part of that football team. But their involvement was very interesting. Kuomba, who was then called Tom at the time, they were all living on the same row, most of them. And they used to have a series of conversation. The issue was when they heard that these boys, men in jail were supposed to be killed. So the idea was, okay, we're not going to sit here for these people to get killed. So if they were going to bring people from the shuffling that would do the actual shooting, according to the story. So if they come to do the shooting, we're going to defend. So Nelson had in a house, that little hut that is about maybe 15 by 17. He had all my brothers, my sisters, all of them were living with him. I consider myself Congo man. I don't want no country man in my house. So when they come, they all go to his place. So all of them were there. All my brothers and sisters here in the United States now, they were there in the house with him. So one Friday afternoon, he came over to my house and explained what was happening, and that should, in case he get killed, that I should take care of his son. I said, okay, what are you talking about? So he explained what he was going to do, how they were going to defend these people. So I said, okay, if you want to do something like this, I will call my father or call my uncle who was behind the executive mansion, let him come and hear you. He said, oh, I'm just joking. I'm just playing with you. It's okay. That was the end of the conversation. He left. About 2 weeks later, he came back and said, the story I told you the other time is very serious. We've been having a series of meetings. So in fact, we're supposed to have another meeting tonight on the beach behind the barracks. So you know, he showed me what to do and stuff. So I went in there, and of course, when I got there, they changed the topic and stuff. And I knew most of the people that were there. Okay, so I knew most of the. So we talked. I didn't take anything of it. I came back to the house. Friday night, the night of the coup, I came from school that afternoon, getting myself ready with my EJ raw business. People can't play with it. And yet all these people that I've rejected, these my brothers and sisters, they're all grown men now. They were all in my house. So I said, what happened? So the late George Shoro, we call him Miller, a good football player. He came up and said, this is what your brother has done. And he said he's gone. So if you don't see him, you take care of his son. And that was a very traumatic issue. Few times before that, I read the story from Uganda as a book written by one secretary from Uganda when Idi Amin was in power, how he used to kill people and what have you. A week before that, there was a Time magazine cover story of situation in Congo Zaire, where they tried to overthrow the government, and the French troop was able to kill the people. They were all in the street, and my mind was all messed up. So they left. But what my father used to tell me, said during the time of the war back in the countryside, if a warrior goes to war, they don't worry about what the news coming. They watch, if he has a baby, they will watch the baby. If the baby start crying, that warrior will die. So I told my girlfriend at the time, I said, you put the baby on the floor. So they put the baby on the floor. And I said, I'm not going to sleep. I'll watch the baby. When the baby start crying, then I know my brother is dead. So anyway, we had a baby. He's now 40 some more.
It's okay.
Okay, anyway, he's 40 some more years old now. And I watched this young man laying on the floor. He didn't cry or anything. And around about 5:30 or so in the morning, when we approaching each other house, we blow whistle to announce ourselves, and he blowing the whistle. I knew you were coming, so I let him in. When I let my brother in, I couldn't believe what he looked like. He had around him, all around him, the pistol, the sidearm, the six gun that he has gotten from all of the security agents that was at the executive mansion that night. I think he brought almost like 18 or 19 of them. And I said, okay, you're not going to go back. But when you look at his eyes, Dennis, it was not my brother that I knew. So one of the old lady in our house said, this man, you can't let him stay. He will shoot you. He doesn't even look like himself. So I let him out. And he went back. And about 10, 15 hours later, he came back and then started telling me the entire story. But the coup itself, according to the story, it was Nelson, Penon, Wesson, Thomas Kuomba, four of them going up the steps. Nelson, being a little short one, he has a gun on his side. And according to the story, most of the army that was stationed at the executive mansion, well, most of them were aware now. Nelson used to stay at the executive mansion, so he knew most of the army people that were guiding. The SS guys that were guiding the place, one of the interesting things, one of my older brother was also an SS guy that was supposed to guide that night. And there's another crime boss called Harry Johnson. Harry Johnson was stationed to watch the police. But the intent was make sure that William Quater, they call him William Quater, he's a superintendent, a district commissioner, make sure he doesn't go to work. So Nelson had to go tell William not to go to work, but he couldn't say why. But it happened to be that William got just helping, he didn't go to work that night. So while they were going, the SS people, when they get there, they get to a certain floor, they take the guns away from them. The army people take their gun and leave. The people that got killed that night that I remember were Colonel Rayleigh and I think two other guys. Colonel Rayleigh, when he heard the gun shooting, he started running, coming towards the executive marshal, according to the story. He got killed. There's another crime man that got killed that night as well. Bebo. He's also from Nico, but live in Town. But he was one of the staunch Toba supporters, and he refused for these people to pass. So they started fighting over a gun, and the gun went off. He got killed. There's another gentleman, older person. He's still alive. I'm not going to say where he is, but he's here in the United States, who was then one of the top member in the army, Toba army. He also was told what to do. He did what he's supposed to do. And that was it. When it got to the 8th floor, according to Charles Taylor, who said Thomas Kuomba told him, and I read that story, that Nelson was the first one that took the shot on Toba. And I'm not going to go into that. But anyway, so according to Charles Taylor, that's how Toba got killed. So when they came back downstairs, when Doe were with them, but Doe did not go upstairs with them. He stayed downstairs. And one of the belief they had was that they want to make sure that he was protected, that whatever's going to happen on that floor, he didn't see it, because if he saw it, it might happen to him. So they wanted to protect him, according to the story. So most of the news you will hear that these people, somebody came in and did X, Y, and Z and turned it over. That's not true. Immediately after the coup, they brought in those people from the jail. Now, when the people came from the jail, Dr. Bole, if you go on that former photo, you'll see Dr. Bole and the rest of the people standing there with the pictures, taking the picture. So it wasn't like you have a second-hand person that come in. Now, in terms of death, those days, it's not something that I'm proud of. That's people, those are brothers and sisters, Liberians. Whether they Congo or not, they are Liberians. No matter how much bad treatment they give us, they are our brothers and sisters. But the issue was, what do you do in a coup? And there's a famous saying by Dr. Famler saying, any revolution, you expect people will die. And so was Nelson. In fact, immediately after the coup, he and I recognized there's no way he was going to survive it. None of them were going to survive. It was one of the reasons why in July of 1980, I was shipped out of there to come to the United States. Because if anything happened, so that at least I can stay here and be able to take care of the family. So we knew that he wasn't going to make it. So it's not something to say I'm proud of, but I just thought that I'm glad you brought this thing up. And the reason why I'm going through all of these stories, come next week, you will see the famous Congo's kids, Congo children in Monrovia trying to celebrate the life of the 13 people that got killed. And they refuse. Richard Turbo and his people refuse to bring these people, use that opportunity to bring every one of us together as brothers and sisters. You will see this week, they will come out and have the family of the 13. What happened to Pwebebo, who also from Totown, was killed that night? He was buried in the same grave with Turbo. Why are you not bringing Pwebebo family to celebrate the life of the 13 people? All they do is just celebrate the lives of the 13 people. These are the divisive behavior that got us into these kinds of stuff. Why are you not using this opportunity? Richard Turbo is an educated person. Use this opportunity to bring Liberians together so that we all can have a shoulder. Every one of us want to cry because these things are not something lightly. We don't take them lightly. People die, but they will not do that. And I'm glad you brought me on here because I'm glad we have this conversation. We're having this conversation because next week you will see these people every year. They come out. I mean, every year or whatever on April, they will come out and talk about it. But instead of talking about it from a perspective of as a Liberian, they talk about it as a family member, 13 family member. You think that only 13 of them died at that time? Many Liberians got killed at that time. Why aren't we using this conversation to bring us together? This is what I have to say on that.
Thank you, Mr. To. And very sorry, it's a very emotional topic. I'm praying and hoping hard that I myself get through it. Mr. Freeman, you were, a university student at that time, so you heard some of these stories firsthand. Not to repeat or not to go over everything, but your side of the story. What did you hear? What did you learn? And we also learned about this famous Jebo and all the unknown soldier and all these things happening.
Jebo was not an unknown soldier. Jebo was a captain of the army team, and he was a captain. Jebo was one of those people that the Liberian government had invested tremendous amount of money in, and he did trainings here in the United States and did training. Even the late Charles Julius also did some training here, and Jebo did training in Israel, I think. And there are other facets to that story. Like Samson was saying, there's so many things that came up. Now, Jebo was the actual leader and organizer of this stuff. And but he was waiting at the ELWA junction for Toba that night, because Toba was supposed to go to Bensonville or Bentor, where he usually stayed at during the weekend. But because of a long program that they had at the Executive Pavilion, he decided, they ended close to 12 a.m. He decided that he wasn't going to Bentor. He was going to go the next morning, but he would go on to the executive mansion. And so when but the coup plotters had two places that they were going to get him from. If he went to the mansion, which many of them did not think he was going to go to, there was a certain group that would take action. And if he was going to Bentor, then he will meet with Jebo, who was supposed to be the prime plotter and organizer of all of this stuff. And so that's where the Jebo thing came in. But once they got power, there's another story that some external forces came and told them, you know what, why not you guys take over the same power, instead of letting Jebel come in, we can take over and you guys can take over and so forth. And like Samson was saying, many of the first cabinet members that were in there, you see, most of them were PAL people. The people that came in from Moja came in, I think, if it's not, I think the first week after or a little bit afterwards, that's when some of them were named because they came directly from prison and they took them to the mansion and tried to explain to them all the things that had happened. And so, but it was a time of tremendous confusion. You have to realize that these were people who were not exposed to the power politic of Liberia, the body politic of Liberia to the extent now that they were supposed to partake in. And so they depended on certain group of people. That's why I talk about the infiltration that went in there. Some of them, they were supposed to lay the foundation. And there were a few people in there that were not interested in Liberia's well-being. They were more interested in their own personal aggrandizement. And that's where I think a lot of this thing went wrong. Like I say, I sat across the table from Doe on the same Tuesday they executed the first, I think, 3 people. After the coup, people don't realize that those people that were executed on the 22nd were not the first set of people. The first set of people that were executed were 3 guys. They charged them with armed robbery. The coup took place that Saturday morning. They executed it that Tuesday morning because there was a certain degree of lawlessness around the country, and they saw that if they show example of these people here, it will curb some of the violence. It did curb some of the violence because now they knew that these guys were serious. If you mess around with armed robbery and etc., you will be executed. And so that's how it happened. But my own experience was on Cutna. We were on Cutna at the time. And we were tensed. We had a lot of students on campus whose parents were in power. And so one of the first things that we did as student leaders, and I was in the leadership, was to secure these students to the extent that it would allow us to send them back in some of the villages or to remain in the dorms so as not to be captured by the soldiers, because we did not know which soldiers and what intentions they had. And that night, the late Sickle Warity, Dr. Sickle Warity, one Emmanuel Johnson, he's in Minnesota, and I were walking, going to one of the professor's home when the lights came over the horizon, and it began a nightmare for us because we were held at gunpoint. We were made to sit on dead bodies that was in the back of this car. And they were looking for, certain of these people's children that were on campus. But we had made a decision earlier in the day to hide some of them because we felt that we didn't want these kids to suffer the consequences of their parents' actions. And like Samson said, a lot of these people here, people are not realizing that we're all Liberians, we're all in the same ship. You cannot sink half of the ship. When you're in the sea travel, let's sink half of the canoe and the other part of the canoe will go back to town. No, it's not going to happen. If it goes down, we'll all go down. And though we had our political differences, though some of them had shot at us on campus, or even tried to get us arrested. In fact, they got some of us arrested and put in prison several times. Though they had done those things to us, we thought it best that we protect everyone because we were student leaders, not just for one group of people, but for everybody. And we stood and put our necks out there. That's how we met the late West End. That's how we met the late Samuel Doe. And had meetings with them and negotiated a release of some of the students that were put in prison. We negotiated that, and those are some of the things that we're proud of. That we did, that our humanity came through, and not our vengeful selves, because we could have been vengeful during that time, and a lot of people have been killed for nothing.
So, Mr. Freeman, before I go to Mr. Toad, there's this idea that President Tolbert the government, I mean, it was not just possible that these 17 men, uncommissioned soldiers, go and do this kind of plan. That ultimately it was the United States CIA and other external forces that actually executed President Tolbert and just used these guys. That's the narrative that have been around for a long time.
The narrative has been around for a long time. There are people, one of my classmates in high school and very good Liberian basketballer told me, he said, Manju, that morning on the University of Liberia, on the fenced in part of the University of Liberia, he said there was a white man laying there with bullet wounds. And then after some time, the U.S. military mission helicopter came and they took the man and put him on there. But one thing Liberia is famous for is to come with a lot of theories. And so there were so many things that came at us on those days that, you just try to decipher what is truth and what is fiction. And even to this day. But yeah, everything that Samson has heard, I've heard it, you've heard it. So many different things are there for us to try to, when you sift up, then what goes in and what comes there, what's the truth and what's the lie. So most of what is there, you almost have to reason with yourself and see what was possible at the time. But there were so many things that were possible at the time. Too many factors were possible at the time. And so that's where, but I know how, even right after the coup d'etat, Harrison Penn killed Talbot. But I know one particular PIC person told me it wasn't, he said, no, it wasn't Harrison Penn. He said Nelson Toole was the first one upstairs.
I'm on air, I'll call you back.
And he was one of the first people, like that Samson said, he said Nelson Toole among them was the first person upstairs, I think followed by Kuampa. And he said, took the first 2-3 shots. I heard that from a member of the PRC. You're talking about those people that were that were the first upstairs, that were up the stairs.
So, ladies and gentlemen, if you're just joining us, this is Focus on Liberia. It's April 12, 1980 in retrospect. What happened, why it happened, and what did we learn? That is going to lead us to our next segment, which is why this happened. And then we can go to what we learned. Mr. Toh.
Well, from my perspective, Mr. Guy, this thing, the coup itself, either way, whether it was Nelson, Kuamba, and the rest of the people, or Jebo, it was going to happen. There was nothing the coup party would have done to stop it. Before that, there was other information about coup with the city group. They've always had that issue because the government, two-way party government, was just corrupt. Not only corrupt, but their behavior towards other citizens of Liberia was just bad. Now, Nelson's involvement, as I stated earlier, have to do with the fact that he grew up in Toll Town and saw most of the mistreatment. Now, when I was growing up myself, there's gate in Glory in Nima County. When you're coming from Grand Gila, they put everybody down and look at the house tax receipt. If you don't have it, you're going nowhere. Then another bad place is how do you call it? Kearsburg. Yeah.
Kearsburg.
I didn't know because it's so famous. Casey Boy. That's how we call it, the country people call it. But those were bad area. When you get there, if you pass that, you're fine to go to Monrovia. Why? Because of those kinds of behavior. So Toba also, if you remember, you're probably too young to remember, but a few months before the coup, there was an incident, two incidents that happened in Monrovia. Toba invited young people, young elementary students at the executive mansion to give them notebooks, and they rejected that. They said they don't want it. That now you're ready to give out notebook. We've been suffering all the time. Then Few weeks before, after that, there was a Market Women Association conference where a Market Women Association leader was speaking on radio. We said better ball, Tobo said better ball. We said cool, Tobo said cool. Why is it what we can do that we can get money and Tobo will do the same thing to get money? Look at the family, they got fishy company. You can't do anything in the country without them. This thing was the way Pi had that information spread out. It was permeating all over the countryside. And in Monrovia, there was no way. So the best they could have done was to say, okay, we're going to go to election and try to ease the tension. Before that, those and I'm sure Mr. Freeman will quite remember because he's an educated person. But there was an election, mayoral election in Monrovia. Like I said, I wasn't educated, but I was one of the first soldiers. They called Dr. Sawyer the broom going against Chuchu Hutton. That election, it was unbelievable. That's the first time that I saw young people actually campaigning, going from door to door almost, if there's such thing in Monrovia. But people wanted Amos Sawyer to be mayor. This is how they wanted this government to leave. And to make things worse, the other people in a Tobo elite group refused to even allow Tobo to associate himself with the young people. They have another, and these are mindset of what people have. People believe the Masonic society that they are thing. If you become Masonic, if you become a Mason man, you can go anywhere in Liberia. Nobody will bother you. And they believe that in order for you to join, they will flock you. And I know those things because I've seen some of them, okay, before you become a member. But those are the kinds, why would you treat other people like that? Why would you treat them? And look at the university. Who are these people that go into the university? In order for you to come here in this country, to come to a study, there's a Dr. Kotu, who used to be Minister of Education.
The late Joseph Kotu.
Dr.
Kotu.
Joseph Kotu. He, Dr. Sompo, and one other guy. I took their papers from the Minister of Education. I took it to the Minister of Finance to sign their paper for them to get money to come to the United States to get their master's degree. But guess what? It was not something easy. Some of them have to come and bring goats to give goat to people just so that they'll be able to get those things going. Why? Lamco, when they get money from Lamco, I grew up in Yekepa. I grew up in Bapa. Went to Grassfield High School, which is next door to the other good high school over there. I don't forget the name of it. Central something. It's in Grassfield. Okay.
It's Carolina.
Up the hill and down the hill. That's what we go to. Why? Why is that? Lamco getting money from the iron ore, and you can't have a decent road. In the road I go to Yekepa from Sunny Creek, they have the one big rock. I used to be afraid of that. That's why I remember it. One big rock on the road hanging up. And every time we go by there, I think the rock will fall and hit our car. That's how bad things were. That's how bad things were. And instead of them to pass these kinds of information on to the young Liberian to say, okay, let's work together. They don't want to do that. They truly decided this is not your thing. We're not going to let you have it. They used to have two-way party. Tobo used to, even before Tobo taught me, when I was very, very little, I voted almost 50 times for one person. So when the young people came out, like Mr. Freeman, because they understand the power of vote. One man, one vote. And these people rejected it because they knew very well they were not in power. Their number was nothing. If they open it up, what's happening to them now is what was going to happen to them. However, if they were to open it up and invite the young people to say, let's come and work together, I don't think they will have the kind of suffering they're having right now, and they will continue to have, because after Dr. Weah leave, the next person coming, he's not coming from Congo Town. He's not coming from there. So in order for them to be part of the Liberian government, they will have to work with people. And this is some of the things that people wanted them to do from the beginning. But they refused. So the coup was just something that was going to happen.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
there was something inevitable that was going to happen. Like, Samson alluded to, when you had a certain name, the reason why Samson had to be Samson Brown is because if his name was Samson Toba, he will not get into certain schools. You have to change your name. When you went to live with some certain people, you had to lose your identity and take on a a shadow identity of theirs before you could go to certain types of schools, before you could sit down in certain pews in the church. So these things that were there in Liberia, you have to credit Talbot with certain things. Talbot was a victim of some of his own slogans and his own vision. And I say that Talbot was not vicious enough to carry out some of his own vision that he wanted to bring into Liberia. Talbot recognized the youth of Liberia. Most of our population was young, educated, and upcoming. He knew that they were going to be a major force. That's when he started talking about total involvement for higher heights, mats to mattresses, go back to the soil, all of these slogans, master, beautiful slogans. But he had people in his immediate cabinet that were older than that he had tremendous amount of respect for. They were resistant to change. Thomas' first vice president that he chose was Jackson F. Doe from Nimba County. And these people said no.
Yep.
Some of these people said, no, we want no countryman here. You can't bring all the country people here now. You're coming to cause problems. Thomas started to build the multilateral schools, around the country. He intended to build even more. But he had internal resistance from the True Weak Party. The resistance there was very, very strong. People wanted to keep that status quo. And I guess I said to myself that Talbot should have had the courage to carry on his vision. But when you grow up in our society, sometimes you listen to the old people and you listen to your friends and etc., and then you lose your own vision. And that's what happened to President Talbot. He lost his way and his vision, and some of these people started to take over and carry out their own agenda from the past that corrupted the system, that hindered the system, that kept the system as a retrogressive instead of a progressive situation that he had envisioned. And the continuous treatment of the majority of the people, because the natives are the majority. And the word native tells you that these are the people who were here before every other person came. That's the meaning of native. These are the people who are the land. But they decided that they had certain amount of reservational treatment of these people, and other people were just privileged to do whatever they wanted to do. As a result, we were growing up separate and unequal.
Yeah, that is profound.
And that's how it was, yeah.
So one question that comes to my mind as you say these things is what we saw before, there was a coup, there was war, same things happening today. What have we learned?
Not much, apparently. We haven't learned not much, and some people say we learn anything. Because when we look at the situation in Liberia today, when you go home and you see the difference in between the haves and the have-nots, is almost greater than it used to be. At least in some of the other situations, sometimes the water will drip down. You could drink some water before you get out in the hot sun. But when you look at so many people in Liberia today, it's pitiful. You get up from morning till evening, you're struggling looking for something to eat. Then in the evening, maybe drink some kind of dirty water and go to bed. Our people are suffering. Too many of our people are suffering. Now, if you want to enjoy yourself in Liberia, you have to be within a certain group. We have gotten ourselves now back into certain groupings. Old wine in new bottles. That was something that was written in the Liberian paper by one of my late friends, the late Tom Kamara. We had some beautiful topics those days. One of the guys wrote a poem called "When Things Chakla." When things chakla, he said, when things chakla in this place is going to blow up. It culminated later on to the war. Old wine in new bottles, we're seeing the same things that was happening in old times, still happening today, except there were different faces within the position. When are we going to have a national agenda? We need a national agenda that looks towards the people. If we move from step one, from grade 1 to grade 2 to grade 3, let us be able to do it as a nation. We have enough mineral resources. I lived in Yekepa. I look at it. I lived in Yekepa. I worked in Yekepa. Okay, my father was a teacher at the Area C school where the Lake Kuokma went to, where Alpha Blondie, the great musician, went to. A lot of people don't know Alpha Blondie went to school in Yekepa. You know, where Zach and Jiba, Zach grew up in Yekepa. The late Tikman Nimle grew up there in Yekepa. Then they're talking about, Carroll High School, and the other schools that they rode from Saniquele to Bapa is about 12 miles. From there to Yekepa is around 14 miles, 26 miles. And you ready to go 26 miles, it take 2-3 hours sometimes. And he said, some kind of hell of a rock will in one of those corners when you come over there, you think it's gonna fall on you. People were scared and all those kinds of stuff. So we remember all of those times. But we use our powers for separation, not for unity.
All right.
And that's what we start doing.
Wow. Mr. Toe, did we learn anything at all?
Well, we're human beings. We're evolving. One of the interesting things or solace that I take out of this, even though my brother is no longer with us, but sometimes I feel better the fact that he sacrificed. And this is a true story he told me. When I asked him, when I pressed him, why would you want to do this? And God is my witness here tonight. And this is what he told me. I sacrifice for you. Because if we're successful, many people will leave this country to go abroad to go study, including you. If not, you're going nowhere. Because here's the thing here. Let me just go tell you a little bit on this. When we used to be in Tota on the farm, you know how when we're going on the farm here, and myself, my dad going on the farm, I've always wanted to come to the United States. But my intent was not to come through I wanted people to put me in a refrigerator, close the door, put me in the ocean, and then the sea tide would take me to America. That's always been my story. That's always been my story. Now, let me go back to what Mr. Freeman was saying earlier, before I tell you what I will learn in anything. Wesson and Nelson and a few other people, when it came to this thing, their intent was to have this thing 1 year, turn it over to the government. Nelson, Jeffrey Batu, Bacchus Matthew, and some of the few educated people came here to the United States in late 80s, came for the conference here. And they came to Rhode Island, where Wesley Johnson used to live in Rhode Island. So when they came, they went for the convention in New York. And what's his name? Bacchus Matthew thought he was doing good to them. Put them in a hotel and start giving them macaroni and other quick food. Why Bacchus Matthew and his people, because they're all from New York area, they were eating quesadilla and palmata. So when they got together, when they came to Rhode Island, Johnson's wife prepared quesadilla and palmata for them. So Nelson said, wow, now we're eating. But they kind of Warren, the people get over there in Washington, New York, so Warren. You not see me eat Warren before? But no, what that statement he made, it was very serious, because when they left from here, they went to Liberia, they went to a meeting, and that particular conversation came up that these people, Marcus Matthew and his group, they were not able to lead Liberia. And they asked him why. Why he said that? He said the men took us from here and took us to America and gave us war arms. What do you mean by war arms? He said they call macaroni, that's also war arms. But that's why he don't believe in. So people like Wesson, Nelson Toe, and the rest of the group, all they wanted was just 1 year. The thing they used to tell Doe was this: give it up. These people, these educated, including Mr. Freeman and everybody else, these educated people, they will come to this position. Pa and Moja were not getting along. That there's no secret about that. They will come to this position and they will not do well. Liberian people will invite you back. When you come by, you're not coming as a military person. And you will be much, much more powerful than to stay here. Of course, that didn't happen. So we all knew these things. When the coup happened, you know how the Congo people got back in power? First, they used to start giving money. Then the second thing was same women. I mean, I'm not saying anything here that is strange to Liberian. And these things are still happening today. You get in power, one thing, people start giving you money or start sending women to your side. Today, this government and even previous government, the people that are in power, people like Wilson Tapper, who is quite aware of what the struggle was and what the struggle was doing at the time, yet still he is unable to get this most popular president in the history of the Republic of Liberia to be able to use his popularity to get things done in Liberia. They can't do it. What are we learning? Nothing. One man, one vote. We're happy. We got that. Well, how do we move forward? The roads, when they rain right now, you can't move in Liberia. Not just Grand Gida or the southeastern. Many places in Liberia, roads are closed. Why? Look at the economic situation in Liberia. How many of us? Well, you can't blame the Congo people at this time. So what are we learning? I don't see anything. Even if Dr. Weah leave and the opposition comes to power, Dr. Joseph Waka comes, same thing. Because the people that are around the opposition right now, if you look at them, the young people that are around the opposition right now, they're hungry. They get to power, they repeat the same thing. So I'm not too sure how we're going to move out of this.
And that's the part I'm coming to now. The picture you both have painted looks a little gloomy to me now. I'm scared. What is the way forward?
You don't need to be afraid. What you need to do is to be brave and to say, you know what, we will have to work at this thing. You can't people sit down and they think that that's the people thing. Let it when they do it and it be all right, then we'll go join them. No, you can't wait for someone to be all right by yourself. You don't buy a bag of rice and put it in the corner and the rice cook yourself. You got to work at it. You got to wash the rice. You put it in the pot. You got enough the amount of heat that's there. You can adjust the heat upward or downward before you to cook the rice. It has to be a participatory thing. The development of a nation, in most cases, is not done by the majority of the people. It's a small group of people who put a lot of things together, and then they try to spread it out little by little, little by little. Let me tell you, when I founded, previous to Linsu, when I founded the organization on Continent that lasted long after I left, I call it the inner core. And I started with one person, then I got two people, but we vetted the people that we got in there. And those days during the 2-week pilot time, we had to meet not on campus, not in the open. We used to meet sometimes out in the forest. We sit down there raining, and we're sitting down there, or we're standing in the mud in the rain, and we're meeting, and we're talking about how we want to take over the student power on continent. It's something that you have to work at. Now, what needs to be done is to make sure that we have a leader who has vision. The Bible tells you where there is no vision, the people perish. We do not have a vision for the country. You can be going on a journey and you say, well, I will find my way as I go along. No, you have to plan the way. Most of what we're doing is not planning. People run for the presidency or other positions in Liberia without a plan. We need to get together and plan. And in addition to it, we have to stop the sycophancy in that country. When someone described Doe as a colossus amongst men, one of the greatest visionary leaders the world has ever seen.
Yeah.
Really? When you implant those kinds of platitudes on people that are not ready for them and they ascribe themselves to it, you have a problem. You're 5 feet tall. You cannot be 7 feet and 5 feet at the same time. We need to recognize what we are, who we are. We've got, like I said, we've got resources in Liberia to maintain that country and become a rich country. We got uranium in Liberia. One of the things that the late West End was skillful. People don't know that. Uranium exists in Liberia. We had a corporation of Liberian uranium, a company called CLU, in Liberia, where some people were trying to steal uranium out of Liberia in the late West End. When he got to know about it, he stopped them and put someone in prison. It wasn't long before he was charged with treason and executed and killed. There were people that were trying to stand up. We need to stand up. We need to recognize if we're not patriotic to our own country, we can't ask the United States or Russia or China or whoever other country to be patriotic to our country. We cannot.
It got to be us.
Yes.
Mr. Toe, I mean, Mr. Freeman mentioned was saying that reminds me, and even after that, when President Doe eliminated a first group, even your life was in danger. But let's go to the way forward. If you can quickly touch on that, and then we go to the way forward. Because let's face it, you're a crown man from President Doe's ethnic group, and most of the time when you talk about Liberian politics, they say, the crown people, when the war came, 2 tribes, ethnic groups were marked for extinction: the Mandingo, the Crown. And according to what I heard on radio, that the invasion or the war was to avenge the 17 men. What am I saying? This is the inner rankling, because it started with Doe and his people, then elimination started, then war came, and it seems that we are in a vicious cycle. So touch on that a little bit before we go to how do we move forward.
Well, yeah, thank you. My situation is a little bit interesting. Like as I told you earlier, immediately after the coup, one of my uncle recognized and explained to 2 of us, because when we got to Tottenham, we were fighting, and I refused to eat with them. And I said, I don't want to break bread with them. Nelson and the other group, I said, I don't want to be break with them. I'm a man for myself. And my uncle said, you can't do that. This man you're looking at, he's not going to be here long. And we recognized that. So when we came to Monrovia, we had a conversation between Nelson and myself. And we recognized it, and he explained to me, this thing, none of us that you see here will survive this. We're all going to be dead. So you need to get out of here and go to the United States and try to follow your education. He paid my school fee. I came here to the United States in 1980. I went to the school, got my school fee money, bought myself a car, and I was riding all around here. And the Congo people in Rhode Island decided they may not Syria. And they reported me to the immigration. And the immigration nabbed me, threw me in jail for 2 weeks. And I have to go to court, but I don't want to go to, I want to go to Monrovia. And so I did what they call self-deportation, whatever they want to call it. But I was deported. So when I got to Monrovia on a Thursday, Sunday, my brother and the rest and was said then was arrested for trying to overthrow Doe. So I was accused, somebody who was deported from here, I was accused of taking guns to Liberia to help overthrow the Doe government. And it was a very, very serious situation for me. And without me going, because if I tell this story, It's difficult for my other brothers and sisters from the Crown tribe to understand, and so it usually creates some sort of a wrangling among ourselves. And I'm too old for that now. I don't want to go through that, so I'll just skip most of the issue. But to make long story short, Kumba Tom, who I knew very well before the coup, invited me to the barracks because he was also on him. They wanted me out. So I was invited to the barracks and told me, we're going to find a way to get you out of here. So they were able to put all my papers together, including David Basha, and they were able to get me a visa. So they called the progressive here, Marcus down, and he said, yeah, come on down. So I came back. So when I came back, I decided to take things a little bit serious. Thank God today I was able to educate myself. I'm an engineer here, practicing engineer here in state of California, and I'm doing well. Not money wise, but in terms of career, I'm doing very well in that. Now,
money too.
Each, yeah, go ahead.
I said money too. You're doing well.
Well, I'm not going to say I'm rich, but right now I can go to Walmart and get myself a bag of rice if I wanted to.
Okay.
So, but no, Mr. Ja, these are kinds of things our brothers and sisters need to understand. That the government, in order to do these things, you have to be able to put yourself below the interest of a group. We can't get out of this thing here thinking, oh, it's me first. Me first, you can't make it. And here is what I fault the progressive when it comes to Dr. Weir. This young man, very popular. He went to the world, on top of the world, put Liberia on the map, playing football. And people who play football those days, they call them grown-up boys. Now, Dr. Weir has his own behavior and things like that, but that's not the issue. But the progressive, the educated progressive, said this young man is not educated and there's no reason for him to be president. You would think they would try to put themselves around this young man, help him, educate him, and help him to rule because he's popular. They're not stupid. They all knew Dr. Weir was going to win an election, no matter what. So you go and teach him. Let me just say what I'm talking about. When I left, my little brother was he wasn't even a sixth grade student. But Dennis, when I left from here and went back to Liberia, the boy could quote Martin Luther King word for word. He could quote Malcolm X. In fact, he has a album of Martin Luther King giving speeches. You know how that come about? As Mr. Freeman correctly suggested here, when Pa and Moja got in there, okay, we'll take this other group to teach. We'll take the other group to teach. And certain groups started teaching my brother and the rest of the people. And these people started understanding the functionality of government. These progressive could have done the same thing with Dr. Weir. Help him to understand what a function of a government is supposed to be. If you want something good, you're too old to be president. The progressive must understand, all of us must understand, we're too old to be anything. But the young people that are there now, we ourselves should be able to help them to say, okay, let's help. What is the best way to move this thing forward? But we're not doing it. Oh, you're not educated. You know where he went? He went to people like Emmanuel Shah. You think Emmanuel Shah care for Liberia? He's seeking his own interest, not about Liberia. So when they put him in the bubble now, we all start crying. Oh, the man not listening to us. Exactly. So the way forward, Mr. Denny, the way I see this is that you, the young people, including you yourself, and I know you're a very unselfish person, so I know that. But many of you are going to have to put Liberia first and have a serious all-Liberian conference. How do we move this forward? Those of you that are in the diaspora, you're needed back home. There's no question asked. You're needed back home. That's what Samuel Stewart right now, because he's educated. And if you look at Samuel Stewart, when he's speaking, very condescending, because you believe he's the only educated person in the room. So he say all these things that make no sense to some of us, but he thinks he knows all. You can't advise him. So I think, Mr. Jad, I think this is on you guys. Some of us are gradually getting off the stage. I refuse to get off the stage, but some of us are on a very serious note, gradually getting off the stage. Where do we go? It's up to you guys now.
Wow. Thank you so much, Mr. Freeman and Mr. To. I am, enjoying this so much until we have not even read comments or we've not done it. And I don't want to take this thing above 2 hours. But quickly, let me put a few comments on the board. Thomas Awaji is a friend here in Atlanta. He said, when will we learn the real story leading up to 1980 coup? I don't know what else Thomas want to learn besides what we... Thanks for sharing this story to those of us who don't know. And there is one here.
From S.C. Collins.
Okay. Custom Moses, these guys have so much hate for the pioneers' children. Say two of you, maybe I too included. Moses Spencer said Trevor did nothing wrong to warrant his death. And I don't know if any of you mentioned that he deserved to die. And then Joseph said, please encourage Mr. Samson too with his first-hand insight from his brother Nelson too. May he so rest in peace to write a book. So these are a few of the comments. Patrick Yanfo said, Mr. To is right. Our elites still have envy. Budu Dua say, in the absence of love for country, it is impossible to build Liberia. Gentlemen, thank you so much for coming. I want to give you all 65 seconds each to make your... First, if you can touch on a little bit about the respond to those comments, and you can make your closing statement. Mr. Freeman.
I would like to say to anyone who knows me and has met me over the years, whether you're American Liberian or not, you will find out that Manju has friends in all aspects of Liberian society. That when I was in the leadership on Kadna, I fought very, very hard for everyone. When I was in the leadership of the LINSU, or the National Union of Liberian Teachers, of the MCSS Teachers Association, no one saw me as being a native person on this side, or a Congo person on the other side, or an American Liberian on the other side. Because when I look at it, one of the proudest achievements I have in my own lifetime, when I was a teacher at Tetma High, and we met with the late Doe, and he said they had to lay off 15% of the Liberian teachers. And my own suggestion when we met and we came to our National Union of Liberian Teachers meeting, I was then the chairman of Information and Propaganda of the North. And my suggestion was that instead of laying off 15% of the Liberian teachers, that we should have a 15% pay cut, in which case we could have everyone continue in their job. And that is one of the proudest aspects of my life. And I know I've been involved in a lot of stuff. And I've never hated Talbot. I'm very, very friendly with a couple of his kids. One of his sons, Stephen Talbot, and I were roommates. And he played for my club, Freeman Club on Katna. And his daughter, I won't call her name, very, very good friends. We were all very, very good friends growing up together. And when you see the wrong somewhere, you have to talk about it. Someone said they wanted to find out what, they hear so many accounts of that. History, you think history is correct in every aspect of it? No. One of my quotations I like, the guy says, when I hear an eyewitness account of an accident, when I hear eyewitnesses account of an accident, it makes me wonder about history. You now listen to people talk about accident, when they start describing an accident, you think there are two different accidents. Yeah, the guy says, so when I hear eyewitnesses account of an accident, it makes me wonder about history.
Yeah.
That's why it's called history. You got your story, I got my story. It makes it interesting so that people can look in there and try to distinguish in between what they think is fact and what they think is fiction. but these are just perspectives of human understandings. I don't have hatred for anybody. I never had hatred for anybody. We regretted Talbot's death. We talked about it. We criticized how it was done. We also criticized, how Doe was killed and other people that died in Liberia. But unfortunately, these things has occurred. That's not what we can go back to. How do we now separate this and make ourselves a viable people?
And one quote from you here tonight, which was captured by Phil Will, is it, we use our power for separation, not for unity.
Yes, that's what we do.
And that's what I want when Liberians talk. Please stop quoting, Winston Churchill and all these people. Quote Mr. Freeman. Mr. To, your closing comments.
Yeah, Mr. Dennis, thank you very much. I think I also want to say here publicly that I have no hate whatsoever against the American Liberian who happen to be our own brothers and sisters. Interesting. In the trial of Dr. Famula Senior, not Richard Henry, but former Chief Justice Jean A. Pierre, who was then the prosecutor, stated this, that who sold us in slavery? Why are we coming back as free slaves? That was a question he was asking Dr. Famula and the indigenous at the time. So these things are not just happening right now, but nobody hates them. I said earlier, my mom, Dr. Bertha Baker Exanko. Now, if you're from Liberia, you know the history of the Baker family. They are not from Town. So these are people that are also American Liberian. So there are many American Liberians who were willing and ready to help young people from the countryside that are willing to learn. So I'm not saying these people are just there blindsided, but the elite, let us be fight with each other, because if you refuse to learn from the past, you're going nowhere. So let us be factual. The elite refuse to accept us. That is the issue. But in terms of death, there's who want to celebrate death? Nobody. Every one of us gonna die. And the situation our brothers and sisters were killed was very painful. And if you are in Monrovia, after the execution of the 13, those of other countries are believing the natural spirit or whatever, the entire South Beach, the cloud, the sky was dark. If you're from Monrovia, if you're in Monrovia those days, you will remember the entire South Beach, the sky was dark. Why? Because some of us believe that this was not something. I was invited, but I refused. I don't want to watch that, because these are our brothers and sisters. So whatever behavior they exhibited at the time does not require them to be killed. I understand that. However, it has happened. Let us use these opportunities instead of using them to continue to divide us, as I would say that the Richard Tubber and the rest of the people continue to do. Because whenever they're ready to have that get together about the 13 family member celebrating the 13, they don't invite other people. And they refuse to understand that that was not just the 13 people that got killed. Some other country people got killed behind the mansion. And they are not Congo people. So if you're going to celebrate something tragic as the Liberian 13 brothers that got killed, you have to use that opportunity to bring everybody together. So, Mr. Jai, I want to thank you very much. I hope that our brothers and sisters will understand that those of us that know these kinds of stories, we don't go around boasting about these things, because there's nothing to boast about. Look what happened to the Civil War. Who among us would say was never touched by the Civil War? Just because one man, one vote. But sometimes the society we live in, sometimes they're difficult to control. So most of you that are young and listening, please do what you can to make sure this country, that is the only country we have. You can call yourself American citizen from now to Judgment Day. You are not. You are Liberian. It's in you. You can't get out. So I want to thank you very much, Mr. Freeman, for being part of this program tonight, Mr. Ya, and the focus. Thank you guys very much for inviting me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much, gentlemen, for this conversation. And I want to say we want to have you back because we just scratched the surface. There's still
Yes.
more to that because
Hot topic.
yeah, after the whole thing, a lot of things happened going to the war and then what we have now. So there's still a lot to talk about. But I want to thank you so much for coming. I want to thank all our viewers who watch it now and they will watch later. We never close our broadcast without playing the song that says we are all Liberians. Whether you are from the American Liberian side or you are from the indigenous side, whether you are from Town, Nipwenkli, or Feasible, or Dodwicken, doesn't matter. We are all Liberians, and we're going to close with that song. Good night, and God bless.
We are Liberians.